Hey everybody, welcome to Slash Bash, where today I am bringing you another Pro Revenge Reddit video. If you are new to the channel, then subscribe and click on notifications so you don't miss out on the fun. In our first story, if you own a company, then you probably shouldn't fire the person who holds the patents. Let's jump right in. This is not my story. I was present for it, sure, but I did not see all of it personally. Rather, this is my father's story. So some context. My father had a degree in mechanical engineering, either a master's or doctorate. It had taken him years to get, and he was very proud of that. Thanks to his training, he had found his way working for many well-known companies, working primarily with the procedures used to make various things. Over time, he'd privately began working on an idea that would revolutionize how school and gym lockers worked. See, my father realized that there was a problem with those type of metal lockers, namely, it was very easy for a person to break into them. What's more, as the lockers were designed, there were multiple exposed moving parts, which meant that if a student put too many books in one, or really anything got against the door, the locker could be jammed shut, making it near on impossible to open. So for several years, Dad toyed with a number of ideas before hitting on a new design which would solve all those problems. The inner workings of the locker's locking mechanism would be contained within the door in such a way that 1. It was impossible for someone to shim or break into, 2. The entire mechanism would be enclosed, and 3. It was relatively maintenance-free. Now at this point, my father was the vice president of manufacturing, and apparently there wasn't a clause in his contract that said if he designed anything while working for the company, then he had to turn that over to them for profit. Dad still approached the company, offering them the design, but they weren't interested. Dad sat on the design for a while before eventually just taking out several patents on them, and then forgetting about them. About 6 months after his first attempt at getting the companies interested, the parent company's owner, chairman of the board, passed away, and the board opted to sell off some of the holdings. The company my dad worked for was part of that. The new owners were young guys who seemed to think they knew everything, as young business owners always seem to think, and they set about changing 99% of the way things were being done. At some point, they stumbled across the plans my father had designed. Now that's where things turned curious. They really wanted to start producing this new design, but as they didn't have all the plans and processes laid out for them, they had to turn to my father for answers. Rather than asking him how to do it or licensing the patents, as any reputable company would have done, they ordered him to turn over all his work or else they would fire him. Dad stood his ground and refused. The new owners and my father went back and forth, arguing over details for several weeks, before finally the new owners fired my father for insubordination. So on to the revenge. There may be more to this, but I'm not entirely sure if it's just pro-revenge. It could border on nuclear, based on what happened some years later, though I'm not certain that what later happened had anything to do with my father's actions. So after cleaning out his office and packing things in the trunk of his car, my father headed home and made a few phone calls. He must have gone through 8 or 9 different calls before he got in touch with someone who was interested in what he had to say. See, my dad was under no illusions that the company that had fired him wasn't going to just make those patented lockers on their own. He also knew that though the company itself was relatively small, the owners had money, and there was no way he could fight them. However, a larger company could, so he contacted the major competitors and made them an offer. He eventually set up a meeting with some people, wheeled out the prototype he'd made, explained how everything worked, and noted that with this system the company could revolutionize the way lockers were both designed and improve both safety and security. What's more, as he was the only patent holder for the next 7 years or so, that company could be the only company to produce them. The competitor jumped at the chance and bought all patents both for the design and the process. They even paid my dad a substantial consultancy fee to go out to their manufacturing site and teach their crews how to make the needed tool and die sets to produce them. Less than 6 months after the first company had fired him, their number one competitor was completely destroying them in the market with this new design, and there wasn't a damn thing the first company could do about it. They did try suing my father, claiming he had stolen their intellectual property, but that case quickly evaporated when they had to admit under oath that they'd never actually signed a contract with him, and there was no requirement that he turn over anything he created to the company. In the 7 years from when the second company bought the locker design and process patents, they pretty handily moved into markets that previously they'd been unable to. The first company soldiered on, but by the time the patent had finally expired, they were a shadow of their former selves. The new owners had to sell the company at a loss, with their competition buying it only to shut that production facility down due to redundancy. It put maybe 200 people out of work, though given how they'd lost so much business, I wager that it was far less than that. So yeah, the new guys don't want to play ball, threaten the guy that holds the patents on something they want to do, and then fire him, only to have him take everything to their competitor and effectively put them out of business. Story 2 shows us when a graduate student's advisor plagiarizes her work, well, don't expect your career to continue successfully. For context, back in 2013, I was a graduate student pursuing my master's degree. That was my last year in the program. We had 24 months to finish all the work and the dissertation. My advisor was a professor who was very well known and experienced on my field of work. Let's call her Janet. It's a fake name. Janet and I had worked together with research since my college days as I became part of an undergraduate research with her. At that point, we had been working for about 4 years, and like any advisor-student relationship, we had our disagreements quite often. Janet was used to doing her experiments a certain archaic way. I knew there were better uses for our grant money and always tried to push towards a more advanced method, especially correlating data collection and statistics. However, our relationship was always good. I knew her husband and had been to her house numerous times. She was a little set on her ways, but we managed to make good progress in our field. Anyhow, by the end of 2013, I presented my dissertation to the department and was approved with flying colors. My data still wasn't published in any paper as I wanted to have more analysis in different areas to make a more robust and better paper. With that said, my dissertation was published, and by all reasons that is my work and my experiments. After I got my Master's of Science, I decided to pursue a PhD. While I was still going to work in the same field, I wanted to use different techniques and thus talked with Janet about going to pursue a PhD under a different professor in another university. She always encouraged me to do better and look for ways to diversify my views. I went ahead and contacted a professor outside my country in another university to pursue my PhD. I got approved and soon moved away. For the next 2 years, I still kept contact with Janet, but on the third, she stopped responding. Initially, I thought she had changed her email or something, but didn't think much of it. Time flew by, and in 2017, while reading papers and writing my own, I came across a paper that was strangely similar to my research. I was interested in it. I opened it up to read. To my shock, it was a paper by my ex-advisor. She was up as advisor and another guy who from his CV is her current master's student. Reading the title, I thought, hey, that's neat. She continued researching it. But boy, was I wrong. Reading the paper, I got increasingly angry. That wasn't new research, it was my research. My data was all in that paper, even my graphs and tables. Initially, I thought, oh well, she's also an author, and if she is citing it, there shouldn't be a problem. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. My name was nowhere near that paper as they claimed that research as original. Now I was livid. I sent an email to Janet confronting her, which was never replied to. However, I am not a pushover and will never allow people to claim my work as theirs. She made a mistake by using my data. I'm a researcher and I keep everything I ever worked on saved in external SSDs, encrypted and in my own possession. All cataloged with date entries, and even had my own dissertation to prove my work. In my country, research is financed by governmental grants. I wrote an email to the dean of the grants institution, explaining the entire situation with proof of everything. I also sent an email to the journal in which the paper was published, contesting their paper and explaining everything. It didn't take longer than 15 days for me to get a follow-up. The institution responsible for the grant was furious. They cut all financial aid for her and her student and made a formal requirement to the university requesting her immediate termination. The journal retracted the paper and is now suing her for plagiarism. Now, after all these years, I learned that she was indeed fired and hasn't been able to work in the field ever since. I never met her again and have no intention of ever doing so. Now my work is published and I'm recognized by my contributions in the field. Maybe that was a petty thing to do, but I couldn't allow Janet to get away with claiming my work as hers. This is John from Slashbash. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the video and want to see more of them, then please hit that subscribe button. We'd love for you to drop a like, share it with your friends, and we will see you in the next one.